All right, welcome everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to get started in a few minutes and let people continue to trickle in. Thanks again everyone for joining. We're going to wait another minute before we get started and let more people join. Hold tight. All right, let's kick it off. Welcome everyone to a security edition of Splunk Tech Talks. Today we are going to be Threat Hunting Unlocked, how to up-level your threat hunting with the Peak framework and Splunk. You have the Threat Hunt team here today, or at least two members of it, including myself speaking. So my name is Sydney Maroney. I'm a principal threat hunter here at Splunk. I've been with Splunk for a little over 3 years, and I've been in the information security industry for almost 9 now, doing incident response, forensics, and threat hunting. I'm passing over to my teammate, Robin, who can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Burkett. I'm a senior threat hunter at Splunk. I joined Splunk over 5 years ago and started out in the SOC. And that is where I was first exposed to threat hunting and where I got to move over to the threat hunt team. So I'm super excited to share what we're sharing today.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. As far as the agenda today, first off, I'm going to very briefly level set on what threat hunting is, and then talk about how we do it here at Splunk, what framework we use, with even examples of threat hunts we've actually conducted. And then I'm going to pass it over to Robin, who's going to share how we took the Peak framework and adjusted it so that our non-hunting teams, like the SOC, could do threat hunting very easily. After that, we're going to save some time for questions. And so let's kick it off. As far as level setting, what threat hunting is, we consider threat hunting searching for otherwise unknown threats in our environment. We do this by digging through our data sources for specific threat activity. So I think it's very proactive in the sense that we are trying to go out there and finding bad that maybe our alerts have not captured already, versus, say, the SOC, who is responding. They're very reactive. They're responding to alerts, and they're being pointed to exactly what would be. The overall goal of threat hunting is to find threats, but there are so many more benefits to it that you can get if you bring this to your organization. The big theme today is going to be knowledge. During your threat hunt, you are gaining knowledge, you are sharing knowledge, you're learning what a threat is, you're learning what a threat looks like in your environment, really how it is connected. You might have some key deliverables like detection ideas, risk findings, data gaps, just to name a few. The pyramid of pain is an excellent tool if you are threat hunting. We here at Splunk on the threat hunt team really focus on that top half of the pyramid of pain, as we feel that we get the most benefit when we use this for hunting threats. There are many ways to threat hunt. Most folks are going to start out with some sort of ad hoc threat hunting that they're doing in their environment, and then eventually using a framework. A framework can be incredibly beneficial. It gives you a guide, so you're not veering too far off scope. It oftentimes has deliverables, metrics that you can tie all your hunting to. At Splunk, we internally developed a framework a few years ago that we used for a while. It was based off what Squirrel has put out there. It worked, but it had its challenges. It was very unique to us. So when we were talking to other internal teams and other teams outside of Splunk, we had to explain the framework before we could even share any other information. As we matured our threat hunting, we were looking at different types of hunting techniques. So our internal framework was initially very hypothesis driven. And as we were maturing, we were looking at other techniques like exploratory hunting, and it just didn't fit into that framework that we had. This is really where the peak threat hunting framework came into play. It was released last year by our research team here at Splunk, and PEAK stands for Prepare, Execute, and framework that captures multiple approaches to hunting. So it really aims to fit those challenges that we actually had with our internally developed framework. It has a lot of standards. It's very repeatable, very structured, so it's easy to pick up and use. We brought in 2 new threat hunters last year, and to be able to point to a framework that was well documented, publicly known, had a ton of deliverables in association with it, was incredibly useful and helped those members really get a head start and jump into hunting even quicker. So I mentioned the PEAK framework, prepare, execute, and act with knowledge. There are multiple types of hunts associated with this. So this is probably my favorite part of PEAK. The first one is hypothesis driven. So this is your classic approach. This is where you think something's happening, something bad is happening in your environment, and you are going searching for it in your events. You're trying to prove or disprove that thought out. Second type is baseline or exploratory hunting. And this is where you're looking at what is normal activity and what is not normal. So you may have a new data source that you sent to your Splunk instance and you're not monitoring, you don't really know what's in there. So you could do a baseline and try to find any anomalies, try to find what kind of data is valuable in there. Assisted. Now this one is where we're using machine learning on top of our threat hunting. So like training models or other machine learning commands. The best part about all these types of hunts is that you can use them with Splunk. So Splunk has tools built in that can help you do all these things. So we talked about the 3 different approaches to hunting. Let's dive further into one of them, the hypothesis driven, which is, again, probably one you might be familiar with if you're familiar with threat hunting. So we have our 3 main stages, our phases of PEAK: prepare, execute, and act. And then we have that knowledge piece. So we consider the knowledge piece probably the most crucial part of PEAK because it is tied to each other phase, as you can see in this diagram. And really, as you are going through your hunt, you are gaining, sharing knowledge throughout. We start with our prepare phase. So in prepare, we are selecting a topic, we are doing a ton of research on it. We really want to be that mini SME in whatever topic we're picking. We're creating a hypothesis and getting everything together we need to plan out the hunt. So the idea here is you should probably be spending your most time in this phase. You could start a hunt and pick a topic that you know very little about, and by the end of your hunt, you should know a lot about it. You should be able to share it with others, and know what that threat activity looks like. Once we wrap up prepare, we should be into execute. We're going to be looking at our data sources, say Splunk, maybe index as source types, and looking for that threat activity, running SPL, iterating on it, doing our analysis on whatever events come back. We might even refine our hypothesis, say if we realize that the scope is too large or it's too narrow. We might refine it and jump back and execute. We also might find threats, which I mentioned was kind of one of the goals of threat hunting, and we want to escalate those immediately. The last main phase is act. So in act, we are taking everything that we learned throughout our hunt and all the information we gathered and documenting it. We're documenting our findings. We are opening tickets, creating things like detections or detection improvements, risk findings. Anything we've learned, we really want to make sure that we are documenting. Another big piece here is sharing out what you're finding. So at Splunk, we really we do things like knowledge base articles. You can also do readouts or hunt reports, whichever works for you. This is really the way that you can show your impact that hunting makes on your organization and why it is important and why you should keep doing it. I've touched on these already, but I want to highlight some key points that we encountered when we were adopting Peak onto our team. So I mentioned knowledge, and that's really the theme of today, but knowledge really is power. We really believe that that is the most critical piece of Peak, and that if you are not sharing out what you're learning, then it's just kind of getting lost with the hunter. If you're going to take all the effort to learn about a threat, learn what it looks like in our environment, and have all those findings, we really want to make sure we are sharing that out with the appropriate teams. Say your SOC, your incident response, your detection engineering teams. These can all prove valuable for them. The second piece is the ABLE framework. So this is a framework within Peak, and this is really used when you're scoping out your hunt. It will give you a dive into that execute phase. And these are things you're probably already doing, but it's a really great format to do them in. And we have turned this into what we like to call the ABLE table. So we do this at the beginning of every hunt, or when we get requests from external teams to do a hunt, we will have them fill this out as well. So ABLE stands for actor, which is threat actor. So when you're hunting, you might have a specific threat actor you are diving into and looking for their specific activity, but you may not. So this is a completely optional one. Behavior, we tie this directly to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So think tactics, techniques. This one's pretty straightforward. Location is where in your environment you will be looking for the threat activity. So is it going to be in your cloud environment, in your Mac OS, Linux? Whatever applies is what you're going to want to identify. And then even further, the indexes and source types can be incredibly helpful so that when you get to the next step, you can plug and play into the SPL. Evidence is going to be what the activity looks like in the events. So as detailed as possible, you could potentially put example commands here or parts of commands, really whatever makes sense for the hunt you are doing, you want to put here. Again, this should be part of the scoping of your hunt, and will give you a good idea of what it's going to look like when you jump and you're ready to start doing your analysis. So now that we have talked through what threat hunting is, what the Peak framework is, we talked through how we brought it into Splunk and how we use it. Let's talk about some example hunts that we've actually done. The first example I want to talk about is hypothesis-driven threat hunting. This is a threat hunt we did on Chrome browser extensions being abused. And so we were really looking for the installation of these Chrome browser extensions. We were seeing a ton of intel around them and decided that, hey, we want to see if these are being abused. We had some incidents that were related to them, and so we dug right into this. We have our able table on the left, and for A, we don't have a threat actor for this, which again, it's optional. Behavior, we have the tactic and technique, persistence and browser extensions. Location, again, this is where in the environment we would see this threat activity. So for browser extensions, those are hosted locally. And so we were digging into our corporate host. So indexes and source types that tied back to the host. Evidence, again, this is what the threat activity is going to look like in the events. For something like this, it's a little harder to identify, but we were using the extension app names and the extension IDs for our analysis. We were able to pull inventory of installed extensions and use that for our investigation and analysis during our hunt. So we were looking at the extension names, and then we were looking at attributes associated with those to determine if they were suspicious or not. The biggest key findings from this hunt is that we were not managing Chrome browser extensions. We were letting anyone install whatever extension they could find in the Chrome App Store. Associated with this is that since we weren't managing our Chrome browser extensions, we had little to no visibility into this type of activity. The last finding was your typical like suspicious type applications. We found VPNs, we found torrents being installed and used by users. All of these things have been addressed since, especially the management of the Chrome browser extensions. We now only allow for like an approved list of extensions that you can install on your host. Baseline exploratory hunting, this example looks at VMware ESXi or vCenter hypervisor. So this is another one that came from our Intel team. They did some research focused on adversaries abusing vSphere installation bundles. So we knew that we were logging these data sources, but we did not know to what extent we were logging and what kind of the monitoring looked like. We had some monitoring, but not a lot. So from a hunt perspective, we wanted to learn more about this data source. So when we were baselining, we were looking for things like valuable event types or valuable fields, say command line activity, network activity. And we were documenting all this and putting it in a knowledge base article to share out with our the appropriate teams. The other big key finding as part of this is that we found that there wasn't really any standards for these data sources. And that can be quite common when you're doing like an exploratory hunt. If you have a new data source that's being sent to Splunk, sometimes it's not being parsed properly and it's not being it's not meeting standards. So we worked with those teams to address those in this case. And that's kind of how we came about this. For the last hunt I want to talk about, this one is for model-assisted threat hunting, or math, and we were digging into looking at suspicious user agent strings communicating externally. Why use math here versus, say, another technique like stack? So math is more useful if you have a very large and complex data set and you're trying to find outliers. Something like stack counting, which you might do if you're hypothesis driven or even exploratory, is better if you have something more simple and much more narrow scope. Since we have such a large data set with the network activity, that's where the user agent strings are being captured, we thought the best approach to find the outliers would be to do clustering on multiple parts of that user agent. So multiple parts of the user agent string, and then also the fields associated with it. So clustering works by grouping similar events with one another based on how many clusters you tell it to do. So you might tell it 4 clusters, or your algorithm might even pick how many clusters. But it will find patterns and relationships between all the data on its own. So you're probably asking, how do I do this in Splunk? Splunk has machine learning commands built in, like right out of the box. There are a ton. There is also a app called the Splunk Machine Learning Toolkit, or the MLTK app, which you can download and use. It's free, and it includes even more machine learning based commands and walks through how to use models and how to use some of those commands. The MLTK app makes it very easy. Like for this one, we fed it our input SPL, and we were able to point and click and tell it what algorithm to use, and it actually provided that SPL to do the analysis, and then we could look into the outliers further. Just like when you're hunting and you are iterating on your SPL queries, we're going to be doing the same thing here, either iterating on the model or iterating on the algorithms that we want to be using for our math. The key finding is for this really is that math is hard. You have to know machine learning on top of hunting. But I will say Splunk does make it a lot easier. Again, a lot of these commands are built into your Splunk instance or can be accessible via this app. Splunk also offers a course called Splunk Analytics and Data Science. And this course is a paid for training, but it walks through how to use machine learning and Splunk. And then it even goes in depth into how to use the MLTK app. It's very cool. I would definitely recommend it if this is something you're interested in. Again, this type of hunting is definitely more advanced. So if you're trying to mature your threat hunting or looking to do something new outside of hypothesis driven or baseline, this is really a good venue. Big takeaway from all those hunt examples really is that knowledge is power. So this screenshot is a dashboard that we use to show our findings. So it's a Sankey diagram that you can build in the visualization in Splunk, and it ties all of our hunts to the findings and the teams they're associated with. And it's really one way that we can show how we are impacting the organization. We're taking all the knowledge that we gained as part of our hunt, and we are sharing it with the org in some way, whether it be findings or knowledge-based articles or whatnot. Some lessons learned when we were implementing the peak framework. Standards are incredibly important. Having some sort of process and documentation to point to can really be a great way to either start your threat hunting program or mature it if you've had it for a while. So like I mentioned, we brought on 2 new people last year. Using this really helped us mature and get to where we're at today. Another perk, peak is publicly known. So it's super easy to knowledge share with others. I mean, that's why we're here today. We're talking to you about the peak framework because it's publicly available. Lastly, remember to share what you're learning as part of your hunting. If you're trying to bring it into your organization or grow it in your organization, this is how you're going to show your impact and show that threat hunting is important to do at your organization. So now that you've learned all about threat hunting at Splunk and the peak threat hunting framework, let's pass it off to Robin, who's going to first do a quick poll, and then she's going to talk through our next section.
All right, we are going to shake things up with a poll here. Please let us know what threat hunting looks like in your environment, and you can pick one of these options. Do you have a dedicated hunt team? Do you have folks that wear multiple hats and they hunt when they can? Do you outsource your threat hunting? Or maybe you're still gearing up. You are working towards having threat hunting, but just don't have everything in place yet. Or maybe you don't have any plans to threat hunt at all. And hopefully we can change your mind after you watch the rest of this. So we're gonna let a few more folks answer. Where do you think this is gonna fall out, Sydney?
I think it's going to be hunt when we can. It's hard to convince your org to build a threat hunting team initially. You got to get that buy-in. So a lot of people do it in the meantime when they're on the SOC or incident response or some other security team.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm with you. I think that it's going to probably fall out there with hunt when we can, but it'd be really great to see a lot of dedicated hunt teams out there. All right, we've got a good number of folks that are answering this. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. All right, last call. Let's get your answers in. And 3, 2, 1. Let's take a look at the results. Look at that. Okay, it's pretty split. We do have a lot of dedicated hunt teams, and then folks are hunting when they can and also still gearing up. Great. Well, thanks for giving us this information and this feedback. Hopefully this next part will help folks from all of those areas. So we're going to talk about I'm going to go through how we tailored Peak to enable everyone to hunt. Sydney showed how the threat hunt team who is doing threat hunting full-time uses Peak. Now, this is for folks that are learning how to hunt and may not have all of their time to dedicate to this. So we created what we call L1 hunts. So what are L1 hunts? They're essentially hunts, and we make them hypothesis-driven, and they have what we call guardrails. We want to create a safe environment for analysts to practice the methodology, gain some new analytical skills, sharpen their SPL, and get exposed to environments and new data sources that maybe they don't get to see on their day-to-day basis. But we want them to be successful. We want to lead them down the path of how to become a successful hunter. The benefit of that is you've got all these new folks that are looking at our environment proactively, and that overall enhances our security posture across the board. So our goal was to take Peak and teach other people how to hunt. How did we do that? Well, we customized it. We took the comprehensive framework that you can see in the top right. It's about 15 steps that includes the Peak hypothesis-driven framework. And we narrowed it down to about 4.5 steps that an analyst has to do. And that's what you can see here in the green. The green steps are what analysts do. The white steps are what we did proactively to enable the analysts to get hunting quickly while still following a methodology that was repeatable. I'm going to go through each of these steps just to give you an idea of what they entail. So first, in the prepare phase, the first step is to select a topic. As a threat hunter, selecting a topic can be daunting. There's so many things you can choose from, so many different environments, different techniques. We streamline this for the analyst by having a collection of hunts that we already know is relevant to our environment. We have it cover different technologies and different areas. So be it cloud or corporate or network. And the goal is to have a variety so that analysts can choose their own adventure. We also, since we have this collection of hunts, analysts will pick a hunt or a topic. They will perform the hunt, and then it will typically go back into the collection. So when analysts pick a hunt or a topic to be hunted, they'll be able to see, has this topic been hunted before? If it's something new to them, they may want to pick a topic that has where other people have gone down these paths so they can learn and take advantage of the knowledge that's already been gained. Or maybe they want to pick a topic that hasn't been hunted before, and then they can break new ground and be the first person to do that. For the hunts that have the topics that have been hunted before, we also provide this last hunted date. So the person who, when they pick up this topic, they are going to pick the date immediately following the last hunt, and that helps us minimize any gaps. I'm going to talk you through an example. In this case, the analyst picked a hunt. It's cron tab usage on Mac OS endpoints. So this is going to take them from the prepare stage of the select topic step, and now they're going to go to research topic. Now, this is where the analyst has been given a lot of information already to be able to start this hunt. We, the threat hunt team, create this research so that the analyst doesn't have to spend a lot of time in this stage. As you know, if you've done research, this can be very time consuming, and we want to get the analyst into the execute phase as soon as possible. So we provide things like a hypothesis. In this case, it's adversaries are utilizing cron tab on Splunk Mac OS endpoints to establish persistence. The way we do our hypotheses, we look at we want to make sure that they all have a target, a technique, and a payload. In this case, the target is Mac OS endpoints. The technique is cron tab, and the payload is establishing persistence. And in case you're not sure what cron tab is, that is basically a scheduling tasks, a way to schedule tasks. This is something that is commonly done in the environment for productivity purposes, but also can be used by adversaries to schedule things like a reverse shell to show up, and that would help them gain persistence on a host. So we give the analyst a description of what the technique is that they're looking for, what's common in the environment, what some malicious uses of it, so they can be aware of what they would be looking for maliciously. And then we give them references. We love to refer them to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then we give them base SPL. This is specifically, it is base SPL. It's the base amount of SPL that will generate events. It's just starter SPL, because the goal is that they're going to take this and make it their own and filter it and really make this more targeted to what they're hunting for. And then we give them a time frame to start with. One of the guardrails we use to keep these hunts small in scope is by using a small time frame. So this is what is given to the analyst. There is one piece that we want them to do in the research stage, and that is to fill out the able table. So in this case, the analyst found an attacker, or sorry, an actor that is using this technique. They have identified the MITRE ATT&CK tactics and techniques. They know that they're going to be hunting in our corporate host environment, looking for Mac OS hosts, and they're going to be looking at our endpoint logs. And for evidence, they've identified some of the things they're going to be looking for in the logs. So by filling out this able table, the analyst knows what they're going for, what they're going to be looking for. So that takes them into the next phase, which is the execute phase. And this is where we want our analysts spending most of the time. This is where they get to dig into the environment, look at events, find out what's normal, what's not normal, what sticks out as something that needs to be analyzed further. And what they do is they take the base SPL that we showed before, and now they're going to filter things out. They're going to look for what things might be in the environment that look anomalous but are normal for Splunk. In some cases, we have tools that use cron tab on a regular basis. Those would be considered normal for Splunk, and those are things that the analyst can filter out of their SPL. We could call those anomalous versus anomalous. Something like what the analyst found here on this first event here, you can see something called super duper. And that's something that piqued the interest of the analyst. And they thought, that's not something that is in our environment typically. I'm going to look into that a little further. One other thing that they found, which it was kind of an interesting find, and that was that a Splunker was using cron tab to set up a reminder for them to rest their eyes every hour. So they were able to dig into that, look at the cron tab, see what events were happening, and they could then rule that out as being malicious. But the super duper, that kind of piqued their interest. So they've looked at all their events, they've performed their analysis. We're in the execute stage of peak, and we're going to now move over into the act stage. So this is where the analyst digs in to what they found. They've identified, okay, how is super duper being used? What is super duper? And they find out that it is a disk copying program, not something that we currently use at Splunk, and not something that really we want on an analyst or on our endpoints. So this turns into what we would call an acceptable use violation. And this is a common finding with L1 hunts, but it shouldn't be minimized, because finding things like this, which the analyst will then send over to the appropriate team to get mitigated, minimizes our attack surface. And so you don't want tools like this on people's hosts. And also behind this type of thing, there may be something even more malicious. So this is an example of one of the findings from this hunt. Now, at this point, an analyst, if they can create a detection out of their hunt, we like that because we don't want to hunt the same thing over and over. But most of our hunts are hunts where we have like there are things that are happening in our environment that commonly use this utility. So we really do need to filter out what's normal and what's not normal to find the malicious. Because if we created a detection, it would be way too noisy, and nobody wants that. So what typically happens is this gets moved back into the backlog, and then an analyst who has not hunted for cron tab or worked in the Mac environment may pick up this hunt and then do it for a different time frame. Now, that's not where it ends. So we're still in the act stage. They've documented their findings, found something interesting that's going to improve Splunk security. Now we're going to go into the communicate stage, or actually it is the act phase, but it's the communicate step. So we found, and I think we know that communication and security is critical, and folks don't always get an opportunity to practice, to share what they learn. And we want to use the peak framework and to help the analysts get that opportunity. So in the communicate finding stage, we created a template that has key questions that we like the analysts to answer after they do every hunt. And what that helps them synthesize their information and use this when we have a monthly hunt review so that they can share all their findings with teammates and other teams. We don't want that to be a difficult process. So we want to minimize anyone feeling like they need to create a PowerPoint slide or do a presentation. That's where the questions come in. And we have them answer things like, why did we do this hunt? What methodology did we follow? What was the outcome? So in this case, for the cron tab hunt, the outcome was disproven. There were not adversaries that were establishing persistence. But they did find an acceptable use violation that does help improve our environment by getting rid of that. They talk about what they learned, any challenges that they faced, what they would do differently next time. And then we also ask, should we hunt again? Should we do this hunt again? Because we want to make sure that the hunts that are in the collection are worth hunting. We don't want analysts to waste their time on things that aren't improving Splunk's posture and aren't teaching them something new. So we do take that into consideration so we can keep a really healthy and useful collection of hunts in the pipeline. So at this point, an analyst has gone all the way through the framework for L1 hunts. And when they are ready and have time again, they will go back to the prepare stage and select a new topic and come back through all of these steps. So let me tell you how this has been working at Splunk. We have gotten great feedback from all levels of our security organization. Our SOC analysts are saying they love that they get to look at different types of techniques that they don't always see while they're working their normal tickets. And they like the opportunity to look at things proactively. Managers have seen improvements in the analyst skills. They see their critical thinking is growing and just love that they have an opportunity to build that muscle memory. And directors are seeing that overall, our security is being enhanced by having all these new folks looking at our environment proactively. It's a force multiplier. We have a relatively small hunt team, and now we have all different sets of people that are out there doing some additional hunting and just helping to fortify our environment. So that's some anecdotal outcomes. We also take all of the data that we get from the hunts that are being performed and put them into a Splunk dashboard. And that's where we keep track of the hunts that have been performed, hunts that are still out there to be performed, our hunt findings. We like to look at the distribution of the hunts, and that helps us identify if there's any areas that are lacking coverage, and we may want to shore those up with some new hunts. We also like to see the different types of findings that come out of the hunts. And we get things like security events, new detections, new hunts, because sometimes hunts will generate new hunt ideas, risks and visibility gaps, and that type of activity. So our goal is always continuous improvement. So where do we go from here? Now that we've created this program that has enabled some SOC analysts to learn how to hunt with guardrails, and they've learned this methodology. Now we can unlock some additional steps within Peak as the teams advance. One of the ways that we can do this is start letting the analysts come up with ideas and perform their own research. And we really like to encourage analysts that have gone through this process and know the methodology to create their own hunts. We just had a recent story where an analyst found something interesting in their external threat intel they were reading. They created a new hunt, and by performing that hunt, they identified a phishing campaign that we didn't capture in our existing tools. So it became a really cool cross-team collaboration and just resulted in enhancements to our security. So it shows that the process works. Aside from that, we can expand from doing our hypothesis-driven hunts into doing more baseline or model-assisted hunts. And not only that, but we can expand beyond the SOC. So we use the L1 hunt program when we have folks come in to shadow us. So we have a hunt shadowing program, and we start them out with L1 hunts. We also have incident responders that do L1 hunts when they have time. And what happens with that, once you start getting different teams that are performing these hunts, ideally, the next step is a train the trainer model. So if you can get these teams outside of the hunt team doing this methodology and then teaching their own teammates how to do this methodology, it becomes a really cool self-sustainable program that doesn't now require the threat hunt team to be involved in getting it all set up and working. So initially we were involved in getting the process set up, but then if we can get this to be self-sustaining, it's a great thing. Now that we've talked about how to go forward with L1 hunts and where to go next once you get it set up, let's look back, talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned, and I'll share with you some things that might help you get this set up in your environment as well. Okay, well, management support to start is critical. When you're asking SOC analysts to hunt, they need a dedicated chunk of time in order to do that. And you need management's approval to allow that to happen. And also on their team, they've got senior analysts and principal analysts. They need to be involved as well. So if an analyst gets stuck, that's their first line of support to help them get unstuck. But once you have that, and people start hunting and the findings happen and the knowledge starts getting shared, that momentum gets everyone excited and hopefully keeps this hunting program working. To that end, having a culture of learning is also super important. Knowledge is power, and the benefit of sharing that knowledge as folks go through a hunt and learn something new, it's critical. And that's why we enable that by doing our monthly meetings. But we also have to have internally a culture where people are willing to ask questions, and when they do new hunts, share that information. So the more folks share information, everybody wants to learn, the more folks, it just becomes contagious. So that's one of the great things that we found. Also, it's really critical to celebrate the small stuff. And we found that the teams that are most successful do identify when just things happen with their teams. Well, what do I mean by that? Just the idea of a SOC analyst performing a hunt, that should be celebrated. They have now gone out of a mindset of being reactive to being proactive, and that's a win. And that is just something that should be recognized. Somebody hunting in a new environment, they've learned about the environment, they've learned new data sources, they've probably learned new SPL and crafted their SPL. That's a celebration. The goal should be continuous improvement. It's really important to not get caught up in, oh, did I find the APT in our environment? Because that is what people think hunting is. But honestly, it's really about getting a really good understanding of your environment so that when something malicious shows up, you can identify it a lot quicker. And by enabling our analysts to do that, we're enabling them to find things a lot faster. So celebrate the small stuff. And finally, every team is different. That is the beauty of Peak. So we have iterated on our approach multiple times, and we found this style works really well with the way that Peak allows you to scale it in when you have folks that need more guardrails, and then release some of the steps, unlock some of the steps for folks that have gained new skills. It works really great for us. Well, thanks for letting us share how we have used L1 hunts to enable everyone to hunt. I hope you can take some of this and get some new hunters in your organization as well. And with that, I'm going to send it over to Sydney.
Robin. So to really wrap up today and what we've gone through, we talked through the peak threat hunting framework. We talked through how we brought it into our organization, and our internal team, our threat hunt team, uses it, as well as we use it for our L1 threat hunting process. Like Robin said, we really hope that this helps you get ideas to bring hunting into your organization or even mature your threat hunting operations in the future. So that's all we have for you today as far as material. So we're going to jump into Q&A and start answering some of those questions. So if you have anything, feel free to put them in the Q&A section and we will answer those right now. Let's start off. What were some challenges with setting up the L1 hunt program? Robin, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So some of the challenges with setting it up, identifying how much to scale it in. Our first iteration, the hunts were a little bit too broad. There wasn't a methodology there. We weren't using peak. And what that meant was that the threat hunt team was spending a lot of time guiding analysts through the process. And that wasn't something that was going to be sustainable. So then we course corrected and we made the L1 hunts too small, too scoped in. And they basically became an extension of the tickets that the analysts were already working. Well, that wasn't challenging for them and that wasn't empowering them to be creative. So that was a course correction too far the other way. So finally, peak came out just at the right time, and we were able to use steps of the peak framework to create just the right amount of guardrails around it so an analyst could be successful and do this on their own, but also empower them to think outside of the box and do some of their own analytical and creative sleuthing. And so, yeah, it's really about finding that right path. And now that we found the right amount of guardrails, it's great that for the more advanced analysts, we can take the guardrails off. For new people that come in, we put the guardrails on. It's something that really works well for us.
Awesome, thank you. I'll take another question. Does peak help to prioritize topics, like which topic I should hunt? Peak does not specifically cover that as far as the framework. That is something that you'll probably need to figure out because it's going to depend on every organization, what criteria you use and what's important to you. Examples of criteria that you might do when you're doing, say, hunt request intakes. This is how we do it. Maybe an external team puts in a hunt request and we are reviewing it. We have our criteria we use, like an example being, was this related to an incident, or has there been a past incident related to this topic? And that is a piece of criteria that might bump it to the top. So it's really going to depend on your organization and what applies to you, but that could be a good example of one. Robin, I'll give you this one. When you talk about sharing your results, who is the intended audience of these reports?
That is great. It really depends on the type of hunt that we do. Since I was just talking about L1 hunts, the audience for L1 hunts to share, we've opened it up for anyone in our security organization who's interested in learning about threat hunting. The main audience is other analysts. We want analysts to share what they've learned and help impart that knowledge on everyone else, so we can improve the overall posture and the overall knowledge of everyone. So it really is the analysts, but also it's just across the organization. We've got detection engineers that are interested in learning about this knowledge and trying to figure out, hey, is there something detectionable in there that we can create that we hadn't thought about before? We've got our incident response folks that are interested in this. We've got folks from our security engineering team that are interested, that like to just sit in on the hunt reviews to get information. So it typically for L1s, it is the individual contributors that are working on gaining that knowledge, but it can vary. And then if we do other types of hunts, depends on where we got the idea from. If it came down from a leadership perspective, like, hey, we want you guys to go on this, then the report would be, they would be the audience for that report.
Thanks, Robin. Where does emulation fit into the peak framework? I will answer this one. So emulation is something that is optional, but I'm a big fan of it. I know we are on the team here, and we would do this during that research piece of the prepare phase. So emulation, you could leverage your red team, you could do it yourself. Now, something like Atomic Red Team has a ton of good information and ties directly to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, shows you how to do some of that emulation. I like it because if you do emulation of whatever threat you're hunting, you can see exactly what it looks like in your data sources, other than just assuming this is what it looks like. There's a lot of questions coming in. There's a couple questions around how we come up with threat ideas. Robin, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, the first place we get our threat hunt ideas is from our threat intelligence team. They are very keyed into what's going on externally and are very knowledgeable about our own environment. And they send over a lot of ideas for threat hunts. We also get ideas from our SOC analysts will sometimes submit ideas, and as they are growing in their adoption of the L1 Hunt program, we're getting more and more ideas from the SOC analysts, from things that they've seen in our environment or things that are tangentially related to what's in our environment. So we get a lot of ideas from there. Also, we get ideas from our incident response team, from things that they have seen. They submit ideas for us. And so our goal is definitely to hunt for things that are most relevant to Splunk. So we always try to tie it into our organization and what's gonna make our environment more secure.
Okay. Do you convert successful hunts to correlation searches, at least until something is mitigated? What does that process look like? So one of the key deliverables or outputs of threat hunting is our detections, or even detection improvements. If there's a detection already out there and we find that, oh, it's maybe like, we tweak it a little bit, we could capture this as well. That's a big output. We often have those when we're doing our threat hunts, and they would be turned into correlation searches. The process looks like how we really have it. We have a pipeline. So we have our intel team feeds to our hunt, feeds to our detection engineering team, feeds to potentially incidents that come into our SOC, and then our incident response team. How much time should be dedicated to threat hunting per week as a SOC analyst? That's a good one. Robin, you want to take it?
Oh, sure thing. So that is really interesting. When we first started to do the hunts, we tried to scale them down to be doable in a 4-hour dedicated time period. We learned really quickly that that was not realistic. So what we currently do, I mean, it would be great for an analyst to have 8 hours, a full, like maybe two sets, if not for a full 8 hour chunk of time, two sets of 4 hours a week to be able to do this. The way that we have solved the challenge with not having huge amounts of dedicated time is they will start the hunt and get as far as they can in the time that they're allotted, and then they put it on hold, and then they will pick it back up when they have a chunk of time to be able to hunt again. And we try, we work with different options around this. We try to have the hunts scheduled when there's shift overlap so that there's more coverage and minimal impact on the team. And also, if there are any days that we see are a little less ticket heavy, those are great days for hunts to be performed on those days. But it's definitely a balance, because SOC analysts can't stop doing their job, but at the same time, there is a lot of benefit to be gained by learning hunting and doing things proactive. So you'll have to find the right balance for your organization.
What is the measure of success for the overall hunt program? I'll take this one. This is a really good question. We often talk about this, like what is success as far as hunting? So we consider success if you prove or disprove your hypothesis or complete your hunt. We have metrics that are tied to it. You know, if we have findings like new detection ideas, we find threats, whatnot. But like I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, finding threats isn't the only benefit of threat hunting. We have found data gaps. We have had risk findings that have been remediated. I mentioned some of the other things that were addressed as part of the example hunts. Like, that's really incredibly common. And that shows success in our threat hunting program. Like, all the other great work we do, and even just the knowledge and sharing that, like that can be a key of showing our success. All right, Robin, this is a fun one. What do you think about the word threatening?
Oh no. I just say nope. No.
All right. I'll take it. We didn't mention it at all during the talk, so we gotta at least key it in at the very end. And if we don't get to these questions, like all of them, we'll follow up with you on them. I think we're gonna share or answer all of them and follow up. There's a couple questions about like what are must-have or most critical skills, knowledge to have as a threat hunter. Robin, do you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, a character trait, which is curiosity and tenacity. When you see something, you really need to understand what it is, and you really want to chase it down. I think that is one of the key skills. And just within an environment, just understanding the key parts of an organization's technical infrastructure and what the most important aspects are, and just kind of digging into technologies that are related to what's in your current organization. Yeah, there's broad.
I like the curiosity is probably the biggest one, I would say. Just wanting to know more, that can be a really good trait to have if you're threat hunting. I mean, the technical skills can be learned. It's great to have general OS knowledge and SPL if you're running Splunk, but some of the very important. We have about 1 minute left. What is the overlap with red teams, pen test teams? How do you collaborate? We do purple team. We run purple team engagements quite frequently here at Splunk. So we do work closely with our red teams and pen testing folks as much as we can. I mentioned this before, but as it relates to, say, emulation, if we're running a hunt and we want to emulate something, but it's a little too advanced for maybe our skill set, we might tag in the red team and run a ad hoc purple team to see what it looks like. So we really do try to collaborate and break down those silos. It can be really hard though, because our goals are similar, but we are also trying to hide a little bit from one another. I know the red team doesn't always love to share, and we don't love to share, but we're trying to break that down a lot more.
All right, well, we should probably wrap up.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll get back to you on all the questions, but that's it.